named. What is the reality, and what does that have to do with Meghan Markle, with Ghislaine?
And he persuaded them, saying, I am the victim of a sexual assault, and I can tell you
Forget the Netflix drama. Forget the interviews. The real reason the elites fear Meghan Markle has nothing to do with headlines and everything to do with the circles she moved in long before anyone called her a duchess.
Her nickname is gonna shock you.
Because I'm from the States, you don't grow up with the same...
People thought Ghislaine Maxwell had nothing left to reveal. After all that time in a cold, claustrophobic prison cell, most assumed she'd sit quietly and let the world erase her. But then she opened her mouth, leaned back on that metal cot, and dropped a name nobody expected. Not a politician, not a royal, not another billionaire from that infamous old circle. She said, Meghan Markle.
Towards Harry and Meghan, because Harry and Meghan are so important that, of course, they're...
When Maddox's private conversations leaked, everyone expected explosions. Names, timelines, dirty details, the full scandal buffet. But instead of clarity, the world got a stack of documents that looked like they'd been attacked by a blackout marker on caffeine. Entire hours evaporated. Paragraphs turned into thick black bars. Answers were wiped clean while the leading questions sat untouched, mocking anyone who tried to piece them together. It didn't look like protection. It looked like fear.
He was guilty, and you're a defense attorney. But this one is a gift from above. She's got a very...
Officials insisted the redactions were standard privacy measures, but the excuse didn't fit. Maddox has no privacy left. Neither does her infamous associate. And most of the victims had already shared their stories publicly. So why were these particular sections erased so violently? Why did 12 hours of testimony vanish like they never existed?
Really rankled was the Sussex's rejection of our most revered institution.
Because the redactions weren't random. They were precise, surgical. Someone out there wasn't hiding what happened. They were hiding who was connected.
His juror questionnaire that he had been the victim of a sexual assault.
And sitting right in the middle of those missing blocks was a name never before associated with that world publicly. Meghan Markle. Not mentioned by accident. Not mentioned once, but repeatedly. And always in the parts that vanished.
And a happier Harry, who I suspect still covets the half-in and half-out role.
These weren't throwaway references. They were contextual, detailed, situational. The kind of mentions that show someone wasn't hovering near the story. They were inside the rooms where it happened. Private gatherings. Invite-only yacht events. Dinners where phones were banned and reputations were currency. A world the palace would prefer scrubbed from existence.
Current Cold War status. Dunlop continues, the Prince of Wales would be full.
Someone out there decided the public wasn't ready for the version of Meghan Markle that existed before she ever touched royalty. And the way those pages were erased tells you one thing. Her past wasn't just complicated. It was dangerous to reveal.
It's about the memories of the Maxwell accusers. They were saying that...
According to Ghislaine Maxwell, Meghan didn't always move through those circles under her real name. In certain private environments, spaces far removed from Hollywood, fame, or anything resembling her polished public image, she was known by one simple word: flower.
Public sympathy, but moods can change. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a threat to me.
And this wasn't a playful nickname. It wasn't a stage alias. It was a code name, the kind used in rooms where anonymity wasn't optional but required. A room where identity wasn't tied to Instagram handles or headshots, but to who brought you in, who vouched for you, and what purpose you served. Maddox claimed flower was used more than once. Repeated, recognized. The kind of name people remember because it surfaced consistently at exclusive gatherings. Code names weren't handed out casually. You got one only if you were meant to be there.
Headlines. It will be history that judges William, his more powerful older brother. Only by...
These weren't Hollywood after parties. These were international yacht events. Private dinners hosted by financiers. Gatherings where everyone arrived with a handler and left with secrets.
Questionnaires one by one, and specifically assured defense counsel that had concerns.
Somewhere within that world, Flower had her own profile. An actual private resume, not for casting directors, for gatekeepers. A dossier used to introduce her to people with influence, not cameras. A guide that outlined who she was, what she offered, and why she was being circulated.
That his reign has the requisite hallmarks of modern monarchy, compassion and magnanimity.
A resume for a world Meghan Markle has never publicly admitted being part of. A world where she learned how quiet wealth operates. A world she later navigated far too smoothly for someone supposedly new to it. Long before Meghan became a duchess. Long before she became a global headline or a royal challenge. She crossed paths with the ecosystem orbiting Prince Adrian. Not romantically, not even socially in a direct sense, but she was present in the same curated environments he frequented.
William would do it either, because how can you forgive somebody that hasn't asked for it? So now,
The thing people don't understand about Adrian's circles is that nothing was casual. These weren't random house parties. These were gatherings engineered by billionaire hosts, political sharks, handlers, publicists, and power brokers who knew exactly who to invite and why. To end up on those lists, you didn't need fame. You needed to be useful, intriguing, connected, or strategically placed. According to Giselle Maddox, Meghan Markle was exactly that.
According to Maxwell, Meghan was exactly that.
that Meghan Markle's CV included adult entertainment and entertaining guests for.
She wasn't the star of the room. She wasn't trying to be. She blended in, took mental notes, observed the hierarchy, and watched how power moved from handshake to handshake. That kind of proximity teaches you things Hollywood never could.
Had to put money on it right now, Dan, I would say this verdict is probably going to get.
If you had to put money on it, Dan, you'd bet this entire verdict is going to get thrown out. People forget Meghan's greatest asset has always been her ability to adapt. In those early days, her lack of fame made her practically invisible, an advantage in a world where everyone else was being watched.
Before that. So you know, Jeffrey Epstein was invited to the Royal Box in 2000.
Maddox hinted that Meghan's presence wasn't random. Someone brought her in. Someone placed her there. And one of those people, according to the whispers, was Giselle Maddox herself. So when Meghan resurfaced years later in the royal sphere, not everyone reacted with shock. Adrian's circle didn't blink. They acted like they'd seen her before. Because they had. Every story like this has a figure who isn't loud but knows everything. Someone who knows the rooms, the players, the alliances, the unspoken rules. In this one, that person is Serena Falk, Duchess of York.
It's incredible because Jeffrey Epstein was in 2000 invited all.
Most people believe Meghan met Serena politely right before the wedding. That classic teach me how to curtsy moment. Cute story, very royal, very staged. But insiders insist the two had crossed paths much earlier. Back when Meghan was drifting into the same exclusive environments where Maddox's world intersected with others. Serena was no stranger to those circles. She moved through them with a survivor's grace. Part fundraiser, part social diplomat, part veteran of her own public storms. She knew the unwritten rules, the whispered warnings, the quiet power struggles beneath the surface.
And there's even said that the Queen unknowingly danced with Jeffrey Epstein. But going back to Meghan,
there were even murmurs of a quiet rivalry between Serena Falk and Giselle Maddox. Not personal, but strategic. Two women maneuvering within the same wealthy orbit, each trying to maintain influence over different factions. So when Meghan reappeared years later, now tied to a prince, Serena didn't react with surprise. She reacted with caution. Because Serena knew exactly what kind of rooms Meghan had been in before, and exactly which names had been connected to her.
I want to put it kindly and nicely, has been around the block so many times, she is already there.
The royal family has many things: tradition, wealth, scandal. But the one thing they fear most is pattern recognition. And Serena, more than anyone, recognized the pattern because she'd seen it before. If Maddox's world was the murky undercurrent no one dared acknowledge, then Soho House was the polished, seductive surface everyone pretended was harmless. A members-only sanctuary where secrets wore designer sunglasses. and introductions were worth more than diamonds. And standing behind many of those glittering rooms was Rowan Burkett, the billionaire who somehow knew everyone who mattered, and everyone who pretended they didn't.
Forget that Virginia Roberts called her as a witness because she had...
Rowan Burkett wasn't just wealthy. He was connected in a way that made Hollywood insiders nervous. Politicians, royals, financiers, media titans. They all drifted through his orbit sooner or later. And silently woven through that same web was Giselle Maddox, who had moved through those networks long before prison turned her name radioactive. Which brings us to April 2015.
Way back for Meghan Markle, almost like Fergie, to come back. But Ghislaine revelations put Meghan in a very, very bad light. Because if it is all true, Meghan Markle is...
Soho House Istanbul opens its doors for the first time. The guest list is flawless, a blend of elites, social strategists, rising stars, and old money wrapped in new packaging. Prince Hale is there, and Meghan Markle. She's there too.
And after that meeting in Istanbul at the opening of the Soho House, she suddenly decided to become...
But this wasn't a we bumped into each other by fate situation. Rumors ignited instantly. Some claimed Burkett engineered the entire guest pairing. Others whispered that Meghan had been placed into that orbit by friends who knew exactly what kinds of rooms she'd navigated before. The same shadow network where she once moved under the name Flower.
He did not want to have her anywhere near her. We all know that Meghan Markle, I didn't know who Harry...
Whichever version you believe, the outcome was identical. That night changed everything. Within a year, Meghan's public image sharpened like a PR miracle. Suddenly humanitarian, suddenly global, suddenly rebranded into something royal adjacent. No one climbs that fast without someone powerful behind the curtain. Someone who knew who Meghan used to be, and who she was about to become. Most people assumed the redactions in Maddox's leaked interviews were there to protect Meghan. That the royals stepped in. That the press was silenced. That some invisible institution wrapped a velvet curtain around her past. But that theory collapses the moment you look closely at what was actually removed.
She was fully aware. Not only did she know who Harry was, she said after him.
Those censors weren't protecting Meghan. They were protecting the men she once stood in the same rooms with. Donors, royals, financiers, billionaires. The kinds of names that would detonate instantly if linked to even a fragment of Maddox's testimony. Meghan wasn't the threat. She was the liability. The witness who had seen too much long before she ever imagined marrying into royalty. She saw faces people desperately want erased from history. She heard conversations whispered behind locked doors.
We know that she couldn't get a job anywhere. And suddenly she's in the royal circles, just like...
She had stepped into environments where no one imagined the quiet girl called Flower would ever become globally relevant. And then she married a prince. She became untouchable, unpredictable, potentially dangerous. Because now she possesses something far more valuable than scandal. Memory.
We know that Meghan Markle, sure, she went after Harry, but she had help getting there.
And that's why entire hours of Maddox's testimony dissolved into black ink. Not because Meghan did anything, but because her presence threatens those who did. People blame streaming documentaries, interviews, memoirs, and the California spotlight. But the real fracture between Prince Wilhelm and Prince Hale runs deeper than cameras or headlines. It cuts straight into the past. Wilhelm refuses to let Meghan anywhere near the monarchy's future.
For Meghan. But I don't think they're covering up for Meghan as much as they're protecting who put Meghan there.
Wilhelm's distrust of Meghan has nothing to do with personality. It's about proximity. Her proximity to Adrian's old circles. Her presence at gatherings tied to the darkest chapter in modern royal memory. Her inadvertent awareness of the people the palace has spent decades trying to bury. That's why Balmoral became a symbolic battleground. When Adrian attempted to attend a single Sunday church service, Wilhelm delivered the quietest, but most devastating ultimatum. Either Adrian appears, or the heir does. But not both. Adrian stepped back.
Sudden rise, or being able to infiltrate the royal family so quickly, to infiltrate.
And with that one gesture, William delivered the message palace insiders have whispered for years. The crown's future will not be shaped by shadows from its past. And for Meghan, that line is unforgiving. Not because she's done anything wrong, but because her history includes circles, moments, and connections the monarchy would rather avoid altogether. Memories the institution has spent decades trying to erase.
Soho House and Ron Burkle. Because it all started.
Every headline-making royal scandal begins long before the public notices. Years before the wedding, the documentaries, the titles, or the tears. And in Meghan's case, the spark, or at least the rumor of one, began on a yacht. Not the influencer kind, but the kind where the guest list isn't posted, it's protected. Where NDAs don't need signatures because the silence is understood. Where the people on board can shift global conversations with a single call.
Opening of Soho House. And we know because they were both there. The Soho House had
whispers say that yacht was Meghan's entry point into a world of elite circles, private gatherings, and high-level social networks. The kind rarely spoken about publicly. It was there she became Flower, a nickname passed quietly among those in the room. There she met individuals whose names never appear in tabloids, because tabloids know better than to print them. Nothing scandalous, just access. Exposure. A glimpse into how the highest levels of influence operate, silently, discreetly, invisibly. But even innocent exposure at the wrong moment can reroute a future, because that night set off a chain that would lead to Soho House, then Istanbul, then Harry, a path that would end with her walking into Buckingham Palace as a duchess. A chapter the palace has never been eager to acknowledge.
2015. Do I have any doubt that Meghan Markle was a call girl? Of course not. I don't have any.
And now, with Maxwell's comments circulating again, even the heavily censored parts, the carefully controlled silence protecting anything adjacent to those old networks is starting to fracture. Her words haven't caused a storm. They've revealed the one already roaring beneath the surface.
Connections of the people that put her there. There's no, by the way, she was all.
Leaks are growing bolder. Sources who stayed quiet for years are suddenly willing to talk. People who once dismissed old stories are now rereading every detail with new eyes. And the real question isn't whether Meghan's past will resurface. It's how much of it will escape the blackout, and which names will be forced into the conversation when it does.
Ukraine and the Q&A in Ukraine with the university saying that she.
Because if the university insists her timeline has gaps, the world wants to know what happened in those missing hours, which circles overlapped, which events placed her in rooms the palace now avoids mentioning, and why do so many powerful people seem nervous about those details becoming public? Because once a storm grows this large, silence stops being protection. It becomes a message. And no blackout marker is strong enough to cover the truth forever.